Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Sketchcraft Shout-Out. I am Rob D. Here with my buddy, Uncle Jerk. Uncle Jerk, what's up?
The Daredevil today.
Daredevil. It's the season of the devil, my friend. Fire it up, right? Wrong com.
Smoke some road beers.
We're here to look at Daredevil Yellow by Tim Sale and Jeff Loeb. And you know why? Yeah, it's true. Right now, Daredevil's on the Disney Plus, and I'm enjoying the series. But more than that, the reason why is this may surprise Uncle Jerk. This might surprise many of you people out there. But I'm gonna let you all in a little secret. This is like my favorite Daredevil story ever. I know.
I can see that.
Yeah. And that's not saying I don't. I think if you want drama, right? You want the real cinematic drama. Go read the Miller stuff. No doubt. No, hands down, no problems. But what I love about this is I'm a huge fan of like slice of life and genre. And to me, Daredevil and Batman and Dick Tracy all have these pulp roots, right? With gangsters and you know, that kind of like Humphrey Bogart, concrete asphalt. It was asphalt jungle, right? Those kind of noir bits. And this book, not just in the way the storytelling is told, which is really told in a slice of life sort of way. It's like a personal love letter to Karen Page through the voice of Matt Murdock. But because it's done in this ink wash style, which Tim Sale had done before in his career. This is not something new he had done, but this was the first time he did it with big time comic book characters. To me, it feels like a real noir, like a Howard Hawks kind of classical, maybe classical Hitchcockian kind of like feel to it that I just think is unmatched. And to me, visually, it's right up there with The Dark Knight Returns. I said it. What do you think? What's your thoughts? What did you think when this came out? What were your initial thoughts?
I was already pretty obsessed with Tim Sale. The story in it is one of the few Daredevil stories that you can kind of like hand to somebody that doesn't even read comics and they can appreciate it.
Right.
And like I already really respected Tim Sale, and not only was he trying the ink wash stuff, but he also takes him back to his red and yellow costume. And it's like,
Right.
I know that it doesn't get a lot of love, and I know some people think it's kind of hokey, but for those of us that are really into the character, I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I mean, this was the costume that would only show up like randomly in a Marvel trading card set, right? And people would go, look at the costume. Like, so that, and we would all laugh, ha ha. But he really makes it work here. And hey, what's up, my Scribblies? Rob here. When you're done with this video, head over to sketchcraft.com. Check this out. It's my own Squarespace website, not being paid to let you know where I made it, but just letting you know where I made it. It's got my full portfolio of work, everything from Spyro, Crash Team Rumble, Berserk Boy, some stuff I did on Overwatch too. Hey, look at that. Actually, we're spending like 4 months on this, so it's the best place to put it, sketchcraft.com. So you want to see some projects that never made it to the finish line, like a video game called Savior Machine. You go right here to sketchcraft.com. You could check out some of this stuff. Man, I did this stuff in 2009, folks. This is a project where I was going to have a chick in a post-apocalyptic pretty environment take down cybernetic dinosaurs in 2010. Sounds familiar. Ever hear of a game like that? But all this and more at sketchcraft.com. Want to grab some original art or lock in a commission? Check it out. Click on the shop button, and this store's got you covered. And if you like hearing me act like a caffeinated goblin about art life and other nonsense, the blog is right here as well. Like this article, Why Creative Work Isn't Always a Straight Line. Check it out. Sign up for my stupid newsletter, and I'll blast you some cool stuff straight to your inbox. Sketchcraft.com. It's not just what's drawn, it's what's between the lines that counts. I mean, look right from this first cover, you know, with the yellow. Now, the colors are being done by Matt Hollingsworth. And if you don't know who Matt Hollingsworth is, maybe you should go check out a book called, I don't know, Batman the White Knight, right? By Sean Gordon Murphy. And Matt Hollingsworth colored the first set of that stuff. And to me, this is like a real early template of that Batman the White Knight. Ink wash, digital coloring, right? Like it really sets the tone for. I honestly, no, I don't know if anyone's ever asked Sean Gordon Murphy how influential this had to be, but had to have been. It can't be a coincidence. Um, there's a lot of DNA in this particular uh miniseries, 6 issues originally, plus I got the trade. I have the 6 issues, man, but the guys are buried somewhere. So I just pulled out the tray, which I keep. Which is nice because it's in nicer condition, the hardbound. I haven't ruined it as bad as the tray. Then we don't have those annoying Hulk milk ads in the middle of every fucking thing like we've encountered before. Also, what I love about Sale's work here is, and what I first found Sale's work in Legends of the Dark Knight, the Blades miniseries, where he fought this guy called the Corsair, which is like sort of like a take on Zorro. It was a whole really cool little series. And so I felt when I first saw Tim Sale's work, I was like, this guy feels like somewhere between that kind of like Ralph Bakshi stuff more than the Disney. I don't know how to describe it. If Marvel Prime, right? Marvel artists, the from Frank Miller to Jim Lee was Disney, I felt he was doing something more like Bakshi with like rock and was the rock and roll? What was that one? American Pop, right? Like American Pop.
Yeah, yeah.
Fire and Ice, and it just had this whole different. It's cartooning, but it's not what they're doing at all. In some ways, it felt closer to Sam Keith than anything else to me, in some of his proportions and stylizations. But what I also love is that he's not using rulers like on these buildings and stuff. These are like all freehand, which to me, one of the reasons why I really love that is it feels personal. It feels like his, how do I say it? The more you put in rulers and get technical with it, the less I see the artist, like the hand, you know? So that's why I'll always prefer Bill Watterson, you know, over a lot of other guys, because that dude just freehanded like all his buildings. Like if we zoom in here, right, like you could see like all these, just on this buildings alone, like all these lines are just they're wobbly, you know. But incredible control.
It's about conveying the image as opposed to like, you know, showing off fancy architecture.
But the architecture is still fantastic, right? Like it says, this feels as good as anything that the Batman animated series at the time was doing, in my opinion. Like yeah. And like this stuff to me, dude, this stuff, I don't know, it resonates. It gives me the same feeling to this day that I get when I open up the original Turtles TMNT stuff, the Mirage Studios Turtles. And it pains me that he never did this with the turtle. That we never got a Tim Sale Turtles green or something. You know what I mean? Like they have that new green, black, and white series right out now, which is phenomenal. But could you imagine Tim Sale doing that here? Like
there's a lot of stuff that Tim didn't get to do. He should have.
Yeah, we lost him way too early, man. He was about my dad's age, and though he lived a little bit longer than my dad, it was still way too early. He had plenty of life. Look how like these buildings are just, they're hand drawn, man. It's like urban sketching now, you know, like that whole urban sketching kind of phenomenon that's kind of taken over a lot of the art. But it predates that, you know, that phenomenon by 30 years. Also, for a first, is they went and Richard Starkings and them went and created a font based on Tim's writing, you know, specifically for this book. And Tim Sale was saying in some interview, I listened to a bunch of interviews before we did the show, and like Tim was saying that apparently Jeff Loeb had it in his contract that Richard Starkings and Comicraft had to letter his scripts. Like he got that in the contracts. So, but I do like that, you know, you got like the artist's signature. I mean, it's a font. Sure, he's not hand doing it, but there'd be not every artist is good at hand doing their own, you know, letters. So this is what I love, man. This is not your typical Marvel. You know, you don't go, oh, Marvel Comics, this is cartooning to me, man. Like, and I know Dave Stewart took over the digital colors on a lot of his other stuff, and Tim seems to be more of in his interviews, he seemed to be more into the Dave Stewart stuff, like on Catwoman, When in Rome. But I prefer what Matt Hollingsworth did right here. Hollingsworth, the only quote I could get on this was Hollingsworth said that if he wanted it to feel like a colorized movie, right? Like a colorized black and white film. So low contrast, you know? And I don't know, man. Like, this is like, you know, when you'd open up those Mirage Studio comics, Uncle Jerk, and you'd see like the April shop, you know, and it'd have all the toys and stuff in the background, like a lived-in universe, you know? Boxing gloves back here, you know, Foggy's baseballs. All it's not just drawing stuff for the sake of drawing stuff. It's telling a story about the characters without actually, you know, verbally writing it all out. But I mean, even and Tim Sale seemed to be like a huge fan of 3-panel pages. That seemed to be his favorite. And I think I might have to put that as a stipulation in my books from now on, because I think I'm much more. I have a lot more of my mental DNA where Tim Sale lies, I think, than even I realized until I went back and reread this. I'm like, yeah, I'm seeing a lot of what I'm trying to go for here. Just never really articulated it in a certain way. But you have any thoughts on this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, Sale is like, I think, really coming into his own. I remember finding him on Billy 99, you know, really early on in his career. And I think that, you know, like you, I really prefer Hollingsworth's colors. There's something about the subdued nature. I think probably the first time that I just absolutely fell head over heels for him was Superman for All Seasons. And this reminds me very much of a refined version of that. And the further that Sale and Loeb pushed into their partnership with these miniseries with Marvel, which isn't to say that they didn't create some amazing work. I really like Hulk Gray, but there was experimentation. And I think at a certain point, Tim Sale most certainly didn't just come into his own, but was given some level of financial autonomy that most comic book artists are never afforded. So it's interesting to compare different periods in his work, because you see different things, and I see different things that I really like. I love the face there, but I do not like the rendering on the chest hair. And 2 or 3 years,
not my chest hair.
It doesn't look right.
It's not himbo enough for you, buddy.
It doesn't. If you're gonna draw 10,000 hairs, you draw 10,000 hairs. Don't be fucking lazy about it.
I was in the army. I've seen guys with a lot of strange chest hairs, my man.
I know, so have I. But like, there are guys like Sam Keith, Dale Keown, Adam Kubert, all come to mind that use the textures and body hair to emphasize physique. It's better, a lot better there in that shot. You can tell he put a lot more forethought into like outlining the body there.
Also, this particular shot, it really reminds me of something. You know who Mark Davis is?
Sounds familiar.
Disney animator, one of the original 9 Old Men, right?
Okay, yeah.
And we're gonna cover his books. There's a book on his whole art, because he left the Disney animation side and went to Disneyland when it kind of first started up. And he's the one that developed like the telling a story in one little piece, like you know, Pirates of the Caribbean has like a little set and there's a story, and then you go to a next set and there's a story, but it's not being told to you, it's just visually all happening, you know? Like, that's what this right here reminds me. It's very Mark Davis to me, you know. It's telling.
I can see that. And like at this point, like Sale was doing a lot of larger images, which is something that he would gravitate away from later on in his career. So
yeah, I think that's a mistake. I mean, obviously I can't tell him that now, but like, I just sort of wish at the time they had just done a trilogy of Daredevil Yellow, a Daredevil Red, and then maybe like their own made up future Daredevil Black or something. You know what I mean? That like takes place in like 3099 or whatever, you know. It's like a Daredevil of the future or something. Like,
yeah, I know that Jeff Loeb has, oh man, how do I politely put this? It's not easy for him to write stuff that this light. Loeb is much more, I think his head was much more in the Ultimates space really quickly.
Yeah, but this works
And
so much better. Like
I know, but when your son's dying of cancer, when you're losing friends,
I don't
I
know.
just
Was that happening in 2002? Like, was that?
no, it wasn't. I said as they progressed.
All right, because
That's what I'm saying. Like at this point, he's capable of it, and I think the writing is strong, but it's certainly not something that I think that Loeb would have gravitated towards on his own anyway. So as you get further into his life and things get darker, I think it got a lot harder. I think if you look at their Captain America series, you can kind of, I think, tell that things had run its course. So
yeah, and I just wish they had just done a run of Daredevil and then maybe a run of Hulks. I mean, listening to John Romita Jr. Not just listen. I mean, I start listening to Tim Sale talk about it, and reading his interviews in the Comiccraft book. He was basically saying that he was just trying to draw John Romita Jr. Spider-Man, and he really wasn't doing his own mark on that. And I'm like, I know sometimes as artists we can overthink what we're doing. And to me, like whatever vibe he was on, I wish he had just stuck with this for a bit, because sometimes, I mean, I know it's really great as artists. We all like to push ourselves and do different things. And I myself constantly do that. But if you get a good rhythm on something, why just chuck it? Miller did the same thing, right? You get the Dark Knight Returns and he never does anything like it ever again, and I'm like, visually chucks it away. And you're just like,
I think basically all great illustrators have that thing where they hit that high water mark and it's what we associate with them, and it is usually their best stuff, and they gravitate away from it really fast. Look at Sam Keith. I mean, sometimes you burn yourself out, sometimes you're pushing yourself.
Sometimes too, our wins aren't always the ones we want. Maybe this wasn't something he wanted to be his big win, It's possible. I mean, I wish I could tell you, because he's really cryptic in a lot of his
he
interviews.
Talk.
No, he talks, but he doesn't say
anything.
anything. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He talks, he just doesn't say much specifically about his process, exactly when did he start doing ink wash. I mean, I also blame the interviews for never really getting that into it with him. Like I even read one Comic Journal interview they did with him, and it's really vaguish. They just want to talk about how he got the Heroes gig. And I'm like, that's the least interesting fucking thing. No one's asking about that. Who today goes, man, remember when he drew all the Heroes art? Nobody. So
at the time, it was a big deal.
Hey, I'm glad he got paid, but at the same time, it's like this right here. I looked at, and we're going to look, folks, at the end of this video, if you stick around. I got a whatever heritage auction sold. I got the high res images, so we can look at that. This is one of those pieces. This piece alone sold for $34,000. It's pretty good. I mean, he did like 5 pages a week, right? So it's a pretty good week when you add it up.
Yeah, he was a natural, and this book flows too. I think that the character allowed him to try an illustrative style that he never really got to tap into with another book. Spider-Man could have, but it didn't click.
You know what it feels like to me? It feels like if Steve Ditko had grown up in the Image era,
I can see that, yes.
With the bigger figures and
facial expressions.
Right.
I think also, I think also probably the mentality behind like Tim Sale and the way that he's working is probably very akin to that too.
Because a lot of those Marvel guys, would go like this. Is this pose the most? It's a gymnast pose, right? It's one of those ones you get out of the Olympics, But as a storytelling piece, it works great, you know? And because it's not like hyper foreshortened, right? Or say Jim lead up, you know, to me, it sort of is removed from the 90s or the early 2000s, you know, the late, you know, I don't know, man.
I think there's
Timeless.
like a Steve Rude style rejection of all of that. Everything has to be dynamic and everything has to look like comic books. You mentioned movies earlier, and I think that 3-panel page we just looked at is a really great example
This one?
of how cinematic this book is. Yeah, look at the subtle movement, you know, and like the thing that really sells this shit for me, and it's the thing that I love about Tim Sale. Look at the rings. They are not stationary. They're moving
Right.
after he's used them to hit him, and they're moving properly, swinging back and forth in the dude. It is little things like that.
This is the stuff I do, and like I hyper focus on this stuff, you know.
I know you do, and it's what I love about your work, Rob, and it's one of the reasons I get pissed off when people don't appreciate the intricacies of your work.
But what I'm trying to say is not, oh, look, I do it too. What I didn't realize until I reread this, I haven't read this, man, since the early 2000s. I'm just not gonna. I look at it, but I don't reread it. You know what I mean? Because I'm an artist. I'm like, oh, look at the art. But rereading it and then looking, once you reread it, you know, you have to remember you engage with the art differently, right? When it's the story. And I'm like, oh, this was deeply influential to early 2000s Rob, you know? Almost in a way where like, I'm kind of, see, I had this thing, man, where I didn't believe in mimicking anyone's particular style. Like I refused to do it, you know? But I'm pretty certain that had I would, my art would look somewhere between this and like Eric Larson and Carlos Maglia, you know, like 100%. Like I would have just done something in this style. I would have drawn Turtles pages like this if I just really thought about it, you know. But I just know my own self at the time. I was trying to like find a way to pay my bills drawing and exploring exploring drawing styles was like, what job is going to pay me to draw this way? None.
Holy shit, I've never noticed that impact homage in my life.
Which one?
That top panel where he's running toward, no, the top left panel.
This one.
That's an homage to Impact 1 with Master Race by Bernard Krigstein. That's
but
great.
even then, like, I love this, right? Because like, first off, it's curving, right? Which this is something I love to do, where you take the curve, you curve the perspective, so it's not just a straight on. And then he's spotlighted, so you got the strong silhouette right there, right? And then like this dude is doing this like broken leg. This is like an animation they call it breaking.
That leg is directly those legs, that placement, that foot, that shoe is from Impact 1. It is a 50s illustration. That's why they look exactly like that. That's why the foreshortening is like that. The bend. It's crazy. I've never noticed that, Rob. I'm sorry. I just saw that and I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I mean, I know like Tim's basically known for the long Halloween, you know, that's what everyone brings up. But I just had this had 3 series or 18 issues worth, I think we'd be talking about his Daredevil more. You know?
I don't think so, but you know, I wish.
Well, look, Daredevil is never going to be as popular as Batman, but for me, he's my favorite Marvel character. For me, right?
Okay.
For me, I'm like, look, the idea of a lawyer who's blind, but also is a vigilante at night, and he uses his senses so much that he's constantly narrating. It's the coolest fucking thing. I mean, noirs are inherent to narration. And usually it's because they're private detectives. In this case, he's a lawyer, but he's also narrating because he has to think it through. Like every great detective, he's really a detective in that he has to constantly, I hear this and I smell that, and he's putting things together. Every story, a proper Daredevil story, is also a puzzler in the same way that Poirot or Sherlock Holmes, you know? And I just don't think that character, like I fucking love the character, you know? And I love how low stakes Daredevil is ultimately at the end of the day, you know? man of the people.
Hmm.
So, as opposed to, you don't, that's why when Daredevil shows up in like plated armor, I'm like, yeah, get out of here, guys. Then the
Aren't you
90s
so
armor
excited
stuff.
they're bringing that back?
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, because everyone has they do it for nostalgia, right? They don't do it because it's a good idea.
Fucking hated it in the 90s, and we hate it now.
It would have been
Shut up.
fine if there was a
Wow.
Daredevil Black series where it took place in like the 3000s and it was like Paul Pope and it was kind of like
If
a
that was
Batman
Marvel,
Beyond thing.
if that was Batman, if that was Daredevil 20 Batman, if that was Daredevil 2099, I'd have been fine. But
Correct. This said it's
not
Daredevil
Daredevil.
1994 is the problem.
Dude, what the hell?
But this alone, dude, And what I love too about Sale is he talks a lot too about how like he tried to wing anatomy when he was doing blacks. Like he'll just draw it in ink and kind of wing it. And he's like, nah, man, all that shit never works for him. So he has to draw everything through. And you can tell it's drawn through. And what that's important is even when you black it out, all the anatomy holds up. It eats time. Really supposedly great, quote unquote, great comic book artists can just wing it. And I go, look, man, there's a reason why I'm a huge fan of Mike Mignola in the 90s, and I'm not as huge fan of Mike Mignola's art now. Because
I was gonna say there's guys who do it, but I don't know if there's guys who do it right.
I know. They all say they do, but I don't buy it. You know what's funny? We were talking about Dick Giordano not too long ago, right? Remember we were reading the inkers bit. We did this episode, folks. I'll link to it, where we had different inkers, and Dick Giordano was on there talking about how like he can do any style. Tim Sale talks about how he on Superman, All-Star Superman, Giordano looked at his Superman and went, no. He put a piece of tracing paper and he's like, you draw it like this now. And I'm like, whatever happened to different styles, Giordano? But this could have been Turtles, right? Like,
yeah, I have never thought about Tim Sale doing a Turtles book, but that is a fucking travesty.
Yeah.
That we didn't get at least like a Last Ronin spinoff mini from him.
Even just something that took place in the 80s, in between things.
Well, but I'm just saying, like, give him Last Ronin. That's removed from continuity. It can look however it wants and do whatever it wants. You know what I mean? Like, it just, he really could have killed that.
You know what I love about this Fantastic Four bit too in here is that it's solo stakes. It's just Reed retaining him, probably because he knows, that Matt Murdock is Daredevil, and they're just finding a way to keep him gainfully employed. But this particular piece is so something that you used to see in the 70s, where they make like a storytelling meal out of it in Mad Magazine, like a Mort Drucker kind of bit.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have all these different secondary things happen around the city, and you'd look around.
You can tell there's an Art Adams influence in Tim Sale's stuff sometimes, which is very strange considering how different they are. But some of his storytelling elements remind me a lot of that stuff.
When they said they were making a Batman animated movie back in the 1992, this is what I thought it was going to look like. Like we were going to get real dynamic animation and get really close in on these buildings. And it turns out, no, we're going to spend, like they kind of going to cut a year out of their budget, and they're going to draw and animate it just like they did a few episodes of the TV show. To which I'm like, why couldn't this just been 2 episodes on the TV show? Why do we have to lose a whole season of Batman to do one movie? I don't know, unless you're going to get the budget. You see what I mean?
Wait. Are we shit talking on Mask of the Phantasm
I have shit talked on the animation on Mask of the Phantasm on our Batman the Animated art book. You can go listen to me talk about it.
I remember when you slammed a little bit on that, but not.
But this is what I thought we would see, the level of detail, but with that those stylized buildings.
God.
You
were.
Yeah, we didn't get any of that.
Rob,
Yeah.
sweet Rob.
I don't think we need to. Okay, look. Question: would you rather have an extra 20 episodes of Batman the Animated and 2 of them be a Mask of the Phantasm story, or 1 movie?
The movie.
No, You would have got the same story in 2 episodes, or even 3 episodes.
I want the movie. It was important. It was at theaters. It was a big deal.
Nah,
Mask of the Phantasm was a big thing for me. So.
it needed a bigger budget. And
did need
Warner
a
Brothers
bigger
has
budget.
never been serious about their animation budgets. Period.
And they're still never serious about Mask of the Phantasm.
Right.
It took them 25 fucking years to put that entire soundtrack out. Are you
But to
kidding
get back
me?
to Tim Sale, you know, when Warner Brothers,
Sorry.
people seem to be a huge fan of these Batman animated movies, and they did The Long Halloween as a movie, and it didn't look anything like Tim Sale's art. And my God, did I want to just like, I flipped, you know?
The only movie that DC's ever done that even approached approximating this style was The Dark Knight, and even that did or I said Dark Knight. I'm sorry, not Dark Knight. Year One. Excuse me. And even that, I believe, did a fairly poor job.
Yeah. But these backgrounds, you know, this feels like New York. I mean, when you look at the modern Daredevil stuff when they're shooting it, the new series, even the first, 3 seasons on Netflix, I see this DNA all over the place. But when I first read this, I'm like, okay, so this takes place in the 60s. Then to me, like I'm seeing like a young, like I'm imagining a young Jimmy Stewart. I'm at like a Barbara Bel Geddes, like a Andy Rooney, for Foggy.
The one thing that I think probably Tim Sale could have done a better job on a few years later is selling the time period a little bit better visually.
Well, I mean, it feels like the 60s. I mean,
it feels, but it doesn't. Visually, this has a lot of stuff that screams late 70s to me in it.
See, I like that it never tells you what year it is, in the same way that the Batman animated series, and even to an extent, the Tim Burton movies don't say what year they're in specifically.
I think Batman the animated series is perfectly nebulous.
Right. I don't want it. It should never be the real world. It can be a world adjacent, but it has to be its own world, in my opinion. And
I was having a talk about this the other day, like, not to digress like really quickly, but I was talking about like the Flash. And I was like, things cannot be real in comics. And they were like, why? And I was like, because like somebody like the Flash would literally be insane. He can recognize things, they're atomiseconds. Do you realize what time would be to him? So like when you break stuff down, it just does not make sense. You can't apply that shit to the real world.
Yeah.
On any level.
I completely disregard. They can exist in a real like world, but it's not our world. It's a world of its own.
Well, that's what I
making.
mean. Our real world, the real world. I'm sorry, whatever you want to call it.
But I mean, I love how like he just drew all the Nelson and Murdoch signs up here backwards, which is like a little thing, but that's a little tedious thing to do.
Yeah, and they're not even at a jewelry or anything.
Right.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I still can't believe they published that.
See, there's a computer right there.
Yeah, true.
Right? You just can't really, that's what I love. You can't really tell. Like, this is Toby Keith, right?
I just love the stylistic changes, too. Like, that page looks nothing like the preceding pages to me.
Right.
And there are some pages that you don't ever get Tim Sale pages that look like that again. Ever.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty unique,
On a lot of levels. It's really clicking.
Yeah.
Which is weird because, of all their series, I don't hear anybody talk about Daredevil Yellow.
And look how Kirby all this stuff is with the giant machinery.
Dude, yeah. Kirby and Toth and Wally Wood.
Yeah.
That's like the DNA of this shit. And then you got guys like Darwin Cook that are seeping into the mix. And
well, he gives lots of praise to all those people. Darwin being his favorite collaborator. And, he's got nothing but love for Darwin Cook in all of his interviews. He cites Toth, obviously. He even had a story he told the Comics Journal, like how he met Toth. through a friend. You know, they just basically they show up to Toad's house, and just at the screen door, he's like, "Thanks for drawing me," something. And Toad was clearly like distraught that his buddy brought a guy there. You know,
Like, why would you tell anyone? I had this same conversation with fucking Mike Allred about him and Steve Rude showing up at, at Toad's house.
yeah. So it's funny, like there's this revolving door of stories where artists keep bringing other artists to Toad's house, and he's always just like, "What the fuck, man?"
Why are you doing this? And then he'll become friends with those people. And then, like 5 years later, he sends them these horrible letters, and they end up hating each other.
Yeah.
God,
There's a lot of self-destruction with artists, right? A lot of artists.
I mean, normally, but Toth was on an absolutely other level. Like,
I would love to see Toth and Harlan Ellison have at it, you know, because those
Harlan Ellison would have eaten Alex Toth's ass with a spoon. Toth was cantankerous. Ellison was intelligent.
this
You
is the
can say
most
what
Gil
you want.
Kane I've seen so far from him, you know.
It reminds me a lot of Sienkiewicz, but yeah. The color breaks and all of that stuff.
And the
I see a
dynamic.
lot. Yeah,
of the
yeah, I see a lot of
human.
Sienkiewicz in that movement away from the Neil Adams. I really love the his simple usage of anatomy with Daredevil to like kind of express his personality too. You got that one where at the very top, that white panel there, dude, that's just so beautiful. Like, what other what other comic book do you see that's just white panel, gorgeous shadow? Like, it's a real world. He's casting a shadow on the wall, but like that's so simple.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
conveys so much about the character to me.
Also, I think nowadays I see a lot of Carrie Andrews drawing this way too, even though he was doing the same kind of anatomy at the same time. If you look at Carrie's stuff.
Yeah, Carrie changes
year.
so much from piece to piece. But yeah, I love Carrie Andrews. When he is on, he is.
I am curious to know, man, like why the margins change so much, like in these issues, like why the tops and bottoms are so close
I don't know.
to the
dude.
edge on these issues. Like,
You know, I'm wondering if he drew stuff on like a weird media. You know, just what
no,
he
I looked
had.
at the boards; they're all Marvel Bristol board with the full Marvel like blue
Huh.
line thing at the top too. Yeah, I went into it. I looked like,
Huh. Shitty formatting.
yeah,
Somebody
it
didn't-
had to
Somebody
be
who
just,
didn't pay attention to the goddamn book.
or someone said make the art as big as possible. You know.
Yeah, that's probably it. They probably just used like a bleed and they were like expand the art to the bleed as hard as you can. God, oh, look at the bottoms of those two pages
I know, but
though.
if you look here in the beginning, right?
Fucking
Look at here,
Jesus.
right?
Yeah, that's inches,
can
and then
you-
like
It's like
look
right
at
on.
look at the bottom of the page. Those aren't even.
No.
Like that's so much small. The left side
Well-
is smaller than the right
Well,
side. Those
part
are
of
on the
it,
same
yeah. Well,
fucking
part of it though.
page.
Hold on, Uncle Drew. Part of it is because he's just freehanding the borders, right? So,
Yeah, but I don't care when you
but when you lose that when you lose that gutter, it just makes it look weird, you know.
I know, but as a professional form, you could make that work. That's disconcerting. That's all I'm gonna see now. Thank you. Rob.
It's that era, dude. There was a lack of
Still
attention
now.
to detail from Marvel at this time throughout all their books. I mean, like when we covered the Truth Red, White, and Black series, and you know, like you're having scenes of Isaiah Bradley discovering all the bodies in a Holocaust camp, and next to it's a fucking milk ad, you know, with the white mustache. You're like, what are you guys doing? You know, what are you doing? And so I just file that under again editorial's complete lack of attention to detail.
That's exactly, and
Just-
shitty formatting and hiring people who aren't familiar with
Fuck
the
heroes. Fuck heroes. You know what he should have drawn? The goddamn adaptation of The Big Lebowski. This bowling scene? You imagine Tim Sale drawing The Big Lebowski?
Oh, I can see John Goodman shooting off a gun, hanging out with
Like, look
Steve
at this.
Buscemi from fucking Con Air, and
Look at
maybe some
this.
John Turturro there.
Over the
Hell yeah.
line, right? And he is. Foggy's writing it down. He pulls out the gun.
There's so much stuff he should have done. I always wanted to see him do a good horror book, like straight out horror, but it just I don't remember ever seeing any.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that, like, when I listen to, he talks about like all the things he wanted to do on his own, but then never got to him, essentially. And when he did, it kind of like overthought it,
Yeah, every time I hear him talk, I remember a lot. He reminds me a lot of Dave Stevens, which is really sad because like Dave Stevens' like final quote was like the worst thing that I could do with my life is die and leave all of these great possibilities and unfinished things behind me. And I was like, oh, fuck. Gonna break my heart, Steve.
I mean, you just weren't getting giant close-ups of a wedding ring at this time.
You weren't getting pages that were this sparse.
Right.
Look at that black bleed. The black bleed on that jacket into the background is so goddamn brilliant. It's Tothian, and no, they did not want that. That was so heavily rejected in comics around this period.
And his faces are so right out of those like early 80s Cerebus, Wendy Pini kind of like run of comics, right? Like
in Wendy Pini. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And that's why I said, like, he just feels like early Mirage Studios to me. I really wish Kevin and them had picked him up. You know what I mean? Back in the day. Got him instead of Jim Lawson.
Oh.
I know, I'm not a Jim Lawson. Yeah, I love this.
That's one of my favorite Daredevil pages in all of history.
But even this cover, I just...
Great cover. Great cover, great composition. It's not the best cover. I think the issue 3, the last one, is like my favorite cover.
I don't like the coloring on the issue 3 one. Hold on, where is it? Is it this one you're talking about? I don't like the blue.
Oh, no, it's 2. I'm sorry. It's the one right.
I don't like that blue.
Yeah, it's the one that's predominantly yellow. It's got the
this one.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. That's the best cover.
I think that is the best cover and encapsulates the series like as an image basically perfectly.
And it's one of those things now that even like on Daredevil Born Again, there are a group of vocal fans, as they always are, who complain. And they're like, hey man, when's it gonna be Daredevil? And I'm like, dude, I am like, what I love about Daredevil is because he has because he does law and legal procedurals, or they've been selling TVs since the dawn of television, Matlock and Perry Mason and all that stuff. That you're able to do issues where you see him actually be a lawyer, and you don't like. It's really hard to, I think, the Clark Kent thing, being a reporter. Like, what does that mean? I'm typing, it's not investigate. There's a level of investigation, but once it's Superman, it's like, he's just going to stop everything. But because he's a normal person with heightened abilities, he still has to piece it all together and earn a living. I just think this is the most, look, if I was in charge of the Marvel Studios, this would have been the character I moved into the forefront post Endgame. Boots on the ground, Daredevil would have been the lead. I mean, they obviously Spider-Man would have been great, but they don't own all the rights to that, so it's not possible, But this page right here blew my freaking mind, dude. When I first read it,
this is where I'm like, yeah, this is Mirage.
This is Mirage, right? Like,
I can see that.
This is Dark Knight Returns. Remember the Gotham City shot in the first issue?
Yeah.
Right? This is Mirage Studios, which is built off the back of Miller. It's
Mirage drawing Dark Knight with Daredevil in it. That's crazy. Interesting.
Speak my name. Just say my name, like, and I'll find you. Like, so good, man.
And see, these are the pages I'm talking about, like with this gorgeous dark aesthetic where like I wish he would have gotten to do like a Dracula book or something like Kelly Jones is doing now. Would have been really cool.
Yeah.
Look at the use of blacks on that. God damn, how have I never noticed? He is so obsessed with Bernard Krigstein and it's fucking with my head. Cause like he studied with Severin and Severin was like Krigstein's #1 go-to. And these color schemes and black spaces, dude, I could show you panels from like Panic and Impact, Two-Fisted Tail and stuff. Oh my God.
Right, you're talking about Maurice Severin, for those who don't know. This comes back to, he did these workshops when he was younger in his 20s in New York that was at John Buscema put together. And he was saying that the best instructor they had there was Maurice Severin. Like, she actually could teach. You know, the other ones were better illustrators, to be certain, but they were, you know, not very good teachers. And so
not nearly as good a composition.
And Severin's the one that brought him into the Marvel offices, even. Like, took him down there. So,
dude, if we had $1 for every fucking person she marched up in there and got a job, dude. If there was one person ever that worked at Marvel that had your sensibilities, Rob, it was Mary Severin. She could see past that.
She sounds like someone that I resonate with. That. I mean, I'm not tooting my own horn, but I have constantly throughout my career, anytime I was anywhere and they were looking for people, I always was like, you know, I met this one person once. Hold on, you know, you know, come in here. You know, I was constantly just think everyone needs to be lifted up and given their chance. You know. And she sounds like someone who was definitely along that line, you know.
And she was really open to differing styles because she always felt like there was a place for that stuff to fit, whether it be cartooning or ultra realism or something like this. Because I think probably Severin had a lot to do with him finding his voice with trying to... I know that one of the things he doesn't discuss a lot in detail, but it is predominant in his art, was his color blindness. And like, I know he struggled with ways to approach art the best that he could, you know, dealing with that. So
this is where I find it interesting, because I didn't know he was colorblind until I reread the interviews, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about it in the Comic Craft interview a lot and the Comics Journal interview. And it's funny, I have the opposite. I have a hard time seeing value. I see colors. I see colors in everything. Even when I look into black, I don't see black. I see all the spotted purples and blues and browns and greens that are in black, you know? Like, they swirl around, they're constantly moving. So like, I have a very hard time with value, and working purely in black and white can give me headaches. I mean, I would love to do some more ink wash, and I probably will, but I could tell you it's going to be extremely challenging. Not the technique of it, it's because when I look, I don't see what people see, you know.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, and he had the opposite. But like, just the setup, the shot, it's so like, look, she's up in a cage, right? You got these giant windows, and you can see up here Daredevil's, his silhouette's up in here, cracked glass, the lights down here, the bad guys down here. And this is like, to me, it's like if you had the Batman 60s show, but you know, Orson Welles shot the fucking thing in like 1942 or something, you know?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, like a Citizen Kane style. Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, and to me, I'm like, forget Spider-Man and then Hulk and then Iron, all that shit's ego to me. When you want to tackle all these characters, settle into one, man. You know? Like,
it was never. I don't think it was ego on his.
No, it isn't. I'm not saying he had ego, but there is a level of we do this and then we do that. Whoever conjured that, or when you go down that path, you know, you're starting to go, we could touch this and we do that. And we'll do 6 of that and 6 of this. I hear all that, but look, if it were me, Matt, I'd spend the next 10 years doing Spawn. I don't get to have that choice, you know. So it's like, you need to find, once you build this, show me a Daredevil comic that looks like this. I'll wait. you know? And
Yeah,
so
and I agree with you, but I don't I it's got to be hard to hang your hat on an established. It's not yours. It's,
he's clearly making it
Daredevil
his
is.
own because there's no Daredevil. Even the Miller stuff doesn't look like this, you know? It looks like its own thing. And it's just funny because everyone compares. You go to his Spider-Man stuff, which is the weakest of them, and then the Captain America stuff is rendered nice, but the proportions are weird on Cap.
It's
Yeah,
I don't
the Hulk
I
looks
don't
great,
like.
but it's weird. You know, he tried to like, in my opinion, I think he tried to save time by just doing ink wash on Hulk, American, everything else open. You know, and it's like,
Yeah,
no, this hard way of doing this, however much time this took, how much of a pain it was, this is the legacy. Give this guy 5% on every one of these fucking things, you know, and like let I hate to see let them cook, right? But seriously, like let the people create brilliance. It's just brilliant to me, man. I'm as impressed today as I was 20 years ago.
I think one of the problems might have been that Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale got to be so popular as a team, they were given too much time and freedom to cook. And that happens.
Maybe.
I honestly feel like, because Tim, I know, was pulled in a lot of directions, especially after um, the money that he got off of and exposure that he got off of Heroes, as well as the good money that Warner Brothers paid him for using his illustrations for inspiration in the Dark Knight trilogy by Nolan. So he could basically do whatever he wanted, and Jeff Loeb certainly is one of those writers who just kind of did whatever the hell he wanted at Marvel.
I was listening to the Joe Kramer's score for Mission Impossible Rogue Nation to this. And one of the things I love about that score is when Kramer took over, he only used the instruments that were available to Layla Schafran in the 60s. No synths, no nothing. Only the horns and the strings, anything that was available in the 60s. So it has a very classical sound to it. And when I listen to that, because there's two Mission Impossible, there's the one you all know, then there's also the different, there's this other theme when you hear it. And like, and I hear that, and I could almost hear the ocean waves crashing, right? You could feel the breeze of the air and the rain. It's very emotional, this art, to me, you know.
His use of the DeLuca effect in this series is one of the most effective uses of the DeLuca effect I've ever seen.
Ever.
This is how Daredevil is meant to look. When Mark Bagley would do those Spider-Man pages with 50 Spider-Men on them, that's how they should have been rendered.
I mean, this shot alone, man, it's as good as anything we saw in the Batman animated series book, you know?
I absolutely.
And that's production art, man. This is just a panel from page 92, you know? That's his most Barbara Bel Geddes Karen Page I've ever seen. If you don't know what Barbara Bel Geddes is, folks, go watch the movie Vertigo, right? And she's the one hanging out, the architect artist, with Jimmy Stewart. She's this little blonde firecracker. So yeah, it's his best female like bit in here.
His cartooning is great.
Yeah.
The fists.
And just this is why the ink wash helps sell this smattering back here, this swirl, is why this panel to me works. If this were cleanly inked and just like 4-color, it doesn't have the same emotional thing to it. It's the swirling bits. It's like you know, back in Sesame Street in the 60s and 70s, they used to have like that avant-garde animation they'd throw in there, you know, and they'd use, because it was limited animation, they'd always use watercolor, and sometimes it'd be done kind of poorly, you know, but it felt, you know, in the lack of refinement, it had a character to it that stood out. And again, there's a 3-panel, but it's just vertical. 3-panel vertical. I really, you know, It's a shame he never got to draw some Savage Dragon. That's an image book he could have done well with. That's a great cover too.
Yeah. It's a real nice cover. I don't like the yellow blend over to the left, but yes. It's too harsh, but I really like that cover.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, the little detail where she's got her foot in the shoe.
Yeah, it's stuff like that where you're like, man, you love Darwin Cook, didn't you?
Yeah. This is something you just don't see today in comics. They just draw a scene over, you know?
Who wants to do extra work?
I don't know. It's extra work. It's just the storytelling. It just harkens back to something that's older, you know? Yeah, see the computer. Look, there's a VHS tape over. That's what I love. I love that it's not. Is this bust just an ode? Is this bust an ode to the Shakespeare head in Batman, or is that like his dad? Like, what is that? I was trying to figure out what that bust is. The whole series, because it's got a beard, so it's not his dad, right? Like it's just a bust.
Huh? Definitely not his dad.
Yeah.
I guarantee you that's probably somebody in like editorial or something like that he knows. He was like,
Marv
I'm going to
Wolfman
call
or
him as a
something.
bust. You know?
Right. He's like, it's Jeff Loeb.
God, I love Foggy's face in that panel though.
Oh, right.
So pissed. The fucking eye. That eyebrow.
Again, this is that Mark Davis style of storytelling where several things are happening all at once that tell the story in one image. I mean, we say now maybe, you know, like Norman Rockwell would be the one people would invoke, but I always felt like the storytelling in Rockwell for the most part was you can impression upon it whatever you want, you know? You can impress upon, you kind of see what you want to see in a Norman Rockwell painting for the most part. There's a few specific ones like when the kid's in detention, okay, you know? But Mark Davis, you know, specifically because of the way Disneyland was set up, you had to tell a story with no narration. And to me, you don't need any of these words to know what's going on. Because he's even got the same grin. So you know they're the same people.
That's clever.
Yeah. The attention to detail, man. That little
I like how
attention.
the head of the guy, I like how his head is in almost the same position. His dude getting punched, but in reverse. Like
Yeah,
on opposite
Foggy
ends of
actually
the
has a very
page.
similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, his composition.
Yeah.
God
phenomenal.
damn it. I miss this guy so fucking much.
It really got to me when he passed. I won't as strong as Miglia, you know?
You saw me. I cried like a baby on my timeline.
Yeah, I mean, I felt, you know, the world was a lesser place.
It is. We lost a voice, man.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping this new long Halloween stuff pans out. They got some great guys working on it, and I'm hoping, but
This Purple Man sequence is brilliant too. Where whenever Purple Man talks to people, they turn purple. Was that done before in the comics, or is that new to this series?
I think they've done that before.
Yeah, I really love that.
I could be wrong.
Such
but
a
I'm pretty
simple. I didn't realize how strong that idea could be until they did it in Jessica Jones, you know, and David Tennant sold that whole thing so well. And they're doing it right here before, you know. Again, dude, this.
Damn it, I know. Just look at that DeLuca, dude. Like, how the fuck, man?
And I was drawing this DeLuca style shit in college at the time, all the time. You know, you love something when you find yourself smiling just looking at it, and you didn't intend to, you know, right?
Yeah.
This color the way Hollingsworth did the colors on this too, in the pastel with the held, like, you know, color holds, really light, not too dramatic.
it
I think
softens Sale's work a lot. And like I know Sale's really big on his line work, so that may have been what he didn't, why he gravitated away from Holland's
it
work.
works so good.
In my opinion, it does too, but he loves his bold lines, and you're losing those bold blacks there.
This is so, so Bakshi to me. Like, it's a different kind of animation.
I can see that, yeah.
In the same way that when I saw Kyle Baker's Captain America stuff, I was like, this is Hirschfeld. This is like somewhere like the 70s kind of animations, that completely goes away in the mid 80s. And then by the time Disney Glen Keanes themselves, it's over. You lose, any kind of alternate animation style until maybe DreamWorks. But even then that didn't really go anywhere. So
I just love the movement. The energy in the movement is crazy.
Yeah.
Because you got like such static shots, but they're really, really conveying.
He's always throwing flags in, and they're always moving the way they should. And every time he draws a Daredevil or, jumping by a flag or swinging by a flag, it always works. They need to incorporate flags into the backgrounds more, into the movie stuff or the live action. It's a missed opportunity there. Like even the way they move here,
That's true. I never thought about the but then again, they kind of that like dark gray. It doesn't really fit with the gritty thing they're doing.
Makes everything move, man.
I agree with you. I'm just saying that they push themselves kind of into a.
This is the most panels I've ever seen on a Tim Sale page in this series. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah,
I love the glasses, how they look almost Mazzucchelli. The whites on the.
Yeah, and he said year one was really the thing that caught his attention.
Did he?
Yeah. That was the one.
Totally makes sense. And what's so funny to me is I just think that the red costume works so much less. Like the yellow and the red just is so much more beautiful to look at. Like I know this is the Daredevil everyone knows, and they think the other costume is hokey and this.
I think here's what I think, right? I think the costumes to me let me know what person we're dealing with here. To me, the red costume says he's got all that ninja shit now,
No, yeah, absolutely.
He's gone through a whole different level of right. And the yellow is, I'm a, I learned boxing,
It's year one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I gotcha. Yeah.
And so very few characters. Superman doesn't work that way. Superman really, man, only works with one costume, the classical costume, The minute you start doing the black thing or something with the electrical, it's all just schlocky. But some characters, like Spider-Man, to me only works. Spider-Man, maybe the black costume, has its because of Venom, but for the most part, Batman has a few different ones that you can go, all right, that era Batman, this era Batman, that era Batman, just by the costume. And Daredevil's the same thing. And that's why I was like, it would have been great if he had a Daredevil red and then a Daredevil black that gave them a chance to say, what is the last story for Daredevil? How would we think he'd end? Because none of these stories are continuity anyway. So
that is one of my favorite pages ever published.
Very Will Eisner, right?
It reminds me a lot. And he wasn't around at the time, but Gerardo Zaffino, when he works now, the textures and like this tiny little image and stuff, I just love it. I cannot help but be obsessed with. There's like 3 pages in this book, The one you pointed out where he's creeping in the window, and she's in the cage, and he's downstairs.
Right.
And then there's one other page. I don't know how you have such a small impressionistic figure that delivers so much emotional impact and story. It is incredible.
I think of the missed opportunities in the world, and this 2002 Tim Sale ink wash thing doing Turtles is up there for me. The other one would be the late 90s Mike Mignola doing a Spawn. Like, he did a cover for Spawn issue 100, but I think he could have really reinvigorated that whole thing. And the way that Neil Gaiman wrote that Angela bit that changed everything for that character, I think that era Mignola could have done something totally different with that.
Oh, I'm sure he could have.
So here we're getting into the making of his rough pencils, his inks, and the ink wash. And again, there's very little process conversation to be had here. It's all just sort of kayfabe, kind of like promotional stuff. Or like how he changed the thumbnail, you know?
I was going to say that's usually what I would see was thumbnails and then roughs, like real roughs, and then a finished image. Like, what the fuck? Come on, man.
It's like, this is it. Knowing that he was working with ink wash, Tim purposefully left some of the space open so the wash would provide texture and mood. To create this effect, Tim took his ink, poured it into several different cups, and added water. Hold on, I just... okay. Thereby literally diluting the density of the black. Conversely, when a heavier black was required, Tim boiled down the ink into a more solid composition that would print even darker than normal ink. Now, I mean, that anyone who knows up printing, that's up to whoever does sets.
What?
The end result was, I know, that's kayfabe, dude. It's ridiculous.
What are you talking about? Prints darker than black.
This is like a Spinal Tap with your printers, right?
It's an 11.
Black for 11, right?
It's an 11.
I know. I just sat here reading this going like, come on, guys. Look, if you guys, look, I should zoom in. Right there.
All I can hear is him saying, no, don't look at my preliminaries. You don't even look at them.
Right. Tim boiled down the ink to a more solid composition, you know, so the print can be even darker than normal black. You know, we're mostly about black, but we have black to 11. You know, our black has two L's in it. It's the 2L black. You know,
it's black just with a K, no C. We fucking boiled the C right out of it. It's just
right.
Black.
It's real black doesn't have a C actually. You know.
Oh, shit.
The end result was a page. I know. The end result was a page with various values of black, white, and gray. At this point, the pages were scanned by the fine folks at Comic-Craft because 11x17 scanners were not easy to come by in 2002. I assure you that. Were scanned by Comic-Craft and passed along to color artist Matt Hollingsworth. Recommended by Tim's close friend Mike Chiarello, Matt was one of the pioneers of computer coloring. He immediately proved to be an ideal interpreter of Tim's work, quickly mastering the wash to color technique. Working in Photoshop, Matt transforms Tim's gray washes into color, creating the impression for the reader that the pages were originally rendered in watercolor. Contributed to the timeless work as a whole. I mean, yes and no. I think, again, it looks more like sepia-toned movies. I'm curious to know at this time if he had to do that all in channels, because at the time that's how a lot of coloring was done in Photoshop.
Guaranteed.
Yeah. You had to go to each channel and like select like 2-3 of the channels and color them at the same time to get the certain color you needed. You know, it's kind of a real pain.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that was not a fun way to work in Photoshop back in the day.
God, yeah, things changed quick.
Yeah. Now you can do the whole thing with gradient maps. You would just you could just lasso, do your select flats, and then just select the line arts and kind of color in. You know, it'd be a little tedious, but you know. You could just manually paint a lot of it in. If it's a little off, no one will know the difference, you know? Yeah. I think you just do the whole thing with gradient maps now.
Yeah, I don't know how else you'd approach it time-wise.
It wouldn't feel creatively fulfilling. It would be like you'd be spending the same amount of time you would coloring a page for less like technique, you know, because you're doing it's a lot of selections, you know.
Oh yeah, okay.
You're gonna spend all your time. This has to be a thing. She has to be, you know, like all these things. It's a lot of selection time and not like I'm painting time, you know.
Yeah.
But the work's already done for. As they say in any good painting, if the values are figured out, it doesn't really matter what you color. You know.
So I'm curious, guys and gals that are watching this. What is your Tim Sale like pinnacle peak? When was it you think that he hit that like perfection point for you? Get in the comments section and let me know. I'm curious. I would love to throw that under the microscope and kind of compare and contrast.
You know what we're gonna do, folks? We're gonna do the Tim Sale art, the original art, but we're gonna make that a separate video because this has already gone like an hour, and so maybe people want to take a break. And I'm gonna post these like within a day of one another, so it really won't be a big deal. So if you're watching this on a Tuesday, then come Thursday or Friday, you'll get the artwork, so we can just kind of go over that separately. But yeah, I definitely want to know when you guys, you know, I'm sure most people say Superman or The Long Halloween. Again, for me, Blades is the one, and then this is the other one.
I'm curious. I am genuinely curious because Tim Sale fans are a diverse crowd.
Well, you know, Long Halloween came out when I first joined the Army. So I really wasn't there for its release at all. I was off in basic training and, you know, just living the Army life for a good year or two. I didn't have access to a comic book shop for almost 2 years, you know? And so it sort of passed me by. Even like Wizard Magazine wasn't something I was reading there for a bit. I had to go and buy them all back up after the fact and get caught up on everything. So, but I was there on the ground floor for this. And I remember being so excited to see what he did with Spider-Man and so let down when I saw what he did. I was like, oh no, you know, damn it. Even he said he wasn't happy with his own Spider-Man. Not the only one.
I don't know what happened with that series.
You know, man, again, overthinking it, you know. Also, I know he said, you know, or he alluded to sometimes with Jeff Loeb didn't know how to like put his bit into there. He didn't know where he fit in the story, or he would just turn in something that was basically written at the last second, he felt. And I could tell you in my career, I've come across that. When you're like, how long did you spend writing this?
At least 15 minutes.
You know, the one he complained the most about, though, really was, we'll end on this one, was Death Blow. He threw Brandon Choi right under the bus. He's like, I guess he was Jim's friend, but I wouldn't get scripts till literally the last second, you know, and those scripts were not good at all. Like, he was like, so I didn't get the money, and I wasn't drawing anything worth drawing. I don't know, man, you know.
Damn.
Yeah, he was brutal. You know, it was Ed Pittsburgh used to say, Brandon Choi, luckiest guy in comics. Like, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So what was your, I'm curious, what was the first Tim Sale you remember?
I told you, the Legends of the Dark Knights.
Is it the Legends of the Dark Knight? Okay.
Yeah, the Corsair.
I remember that's how you said you got into them. I didn't know if that was the earliest one you were.
The first thing I ever saw, and I was like, I love this.
Instantly sold? Okay.
There's something, okay, so that comes out around 92, 93, right? So I was a Batman fan in the 80s. I grew up with the 60s show, you know? I liked when I saw Batman in, you know, a cartoon or something. I didn't have access to the comics. I did see The Dark Knight Returns on a shelf in like 87. And the Art Deco of it blew my. I wanted it so bad. I was at a used bookstore of all things, and my mom was like, "That looks too violent for you." And I was like, "What do you?" My mom, I don't know. It's long story short. So Batman '89 comes out, and then I had more access to Batman stuff, but not comics, like Batman magazines, you know, paraphernalia, but not any like video games, but not comics. So I really don't get into Batman comics per se until the Legends of the Dark Knight, you know? And
okay.
yeah, and so that's when I find, like, I didn't get to read Batman Year One until 93, 94.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And The Dark Knight Returns I would see, but I didn't get to properly read until 93, 94 as well. I had like 1992, I had the 4th issue. The first Comic-Con I went to, I got the 4th issue of The Dark Knight Returns. Because my dad was like, you can buy one thing. And so I bought the 4th issue. I didn't know they had it in trade. I would have just got the fucking trade paperback. I got the whole damn thing. But it had the silhouettes of Batman and Superman in that silhouette where you could just see their logos. And that blew my mind. And so Tim's stuff just felt like it was in the same category as whatever I was looking at with the Miller stuff, you know? So, whatever. Daredevil yellow. Should say Tim Sale and then Jeff Loeb, in my opinion, because that's why we're buying this old Tilson. Thanks for hanging out with me, Uncle Jerk. Going through.
Thanks for having me on, man. I always love talking about Tim. We should check out his sketchbook sometime too. Great book, black and white.
Yeah. We're gonna do that. We're gonna go through.
Awesome.
We're gonna go through all that stuff. All right, man. That's it. As always, be bold.
Keep cartooning.
Peace. What's up, crafties? Make sure you follow me, Sketchcraft, at YouTube and Instagram and everywhere else on socials, as well as Jerk Comics on YouTube and on Instagram and all the other socials. You can also check out my stuff at sketchcraft.com, so you can find my art, and you can buy my stuff at shopsketchcraft.com. If you'd like to get some comics I've made, Spawn Kills Every Spawn, issue 1 through 4 on racks at all your comic book shops right now. Issue 5 out December 18, 2024. And the trade paperback coming to you July 29th, 2025, all the way next summer, but we're going to have cause to celebrate. Spawn Kills Every Spawn. Go get that right now. Support the old Sketchcraft, and we'll see you next time. Peace.